He definitely wants us to know. There's no doubt about that.
Yes.
Okay, so jumping off of that point, I've this is going to be this episode is going to kind of be all right. These are things that are bothering us. So that's what we're gonna be. There's gonna be a little complaining going on. So I'm just letting you know. There was an episode of Ryan Russillo's podcast, Ryan Russillo of The Ringer. It was a week or two ago where he was talking about all of this college football realignment stuff and, teams changing conferences and what's the landscape going to look like. And he goes through this whole thing and his major premise was, I hate it. And and he went through all of the schools like Texas A&M. Are you really happier that you don't get to play Texas anymore and you're in the SEC? Is that really better for you? And Nebraska, are you really better off in the Big Ten? So he goes to all these other fan bases really happy that you're moving to these other conferences, because he wanted, he likes the traditional rivalries and the matchups that you're used to seeing and all of that. And then he has also of the Ringer, and they went back and forth on this. And it's like, oh, it's not going to be the same, and we're not going to get the rivalry games that we get. And so, and I can understand that. I understand if you're used to it being a certain way, and you that's what you like and you want to continue that. Like, I get that. But at the same time, my opinion on that is, we need to make changes for the better. Like, things need to change. Like, Nebraska playing Oklahoma used to be the biggest game of the year. Well, Nebraska's not any good anymore. So why do we need that game? USC, I know people are really disappointed that, USC isn't going to play Oregon anymore. But is that game really, are we really determining anything with that? If you told me, all right, we're not going to get, Ohio State's not going to play Michigan anymore. Like, okay, that would probably suck. If one of those teams moved to a different conference, I'd probably be disappointed because I'm kind of used to that. But at the same time, we just replace it with something else. Like, there's going to be some good college football games. The fact that, this rivalry isn't going to happen. USC is not going to play Arizona State anymore. I mean, most of these things that we're talking about don't really matter. Alabama still plays LSU every year. Florida still plays Florida State every year. Clemson still plays South Carolina. USC is still going to play UCLA. The main rival for every team is still there. And if they're not there, it's usually for a pretty good reason. So my overall take on this is I'm not upset by it. I look forward to there being more good games. That's kind of my general consensus about college football is we need to do things to make the product better and make the product on television better and give me more good games. I realize that is kind of it's a selfish outsider view. I know I'm not thinking about everybody else and the athletes and the schools and all of that stuff. I realize that's kind of where I'm at with it. But anybody who acts like, oh, this is just going to ruin college football, I think that's complete nonsense. Like, I think it's,
I wouldn't necessarily use the word ruin. But, and look, at the end, I'll get in I'll talk about this more in my rant. I'm not saying that I completely, absolutely disagree with what you're saying. I see what you're saying. There obviously are some good points with that. A lot of people are making that argument. Although I will say a lot of people making that argument are on ESPN and FS1, which have a vested interest in college football, continuing to make money and continuing to make more money. But again, I'll get into that in my rant. I think that there's something to be said for, when I was younger, I think tradition didn't really mean that much. But I think as you get older, you kind of go. Because tradition helps connect you to the past, and it kind of creates, whether it's an illusion or not, it creates stability, and it kind of it helps create meaning. And so I think that as more and more decisions seem to be made about these schools need to make more money, and we need better games, so we make more money, and we need to expand the playoffs, so we make more money. Something gets lost, or some things get lost. Anyway, I'll talk about that more in my rant, but I think that's kind of what people like Russillo are kind of pointing out, and I think that it's good that people are out there pointing that out, because I don't think that really gets said, because I think what happens is, while you're saying like USC and Arizona doesn't matter, for some Arizona fans it might matter, for some USC fans it might matter, and they've been playing each other for quite a while now, so it kind of, like I said, it's kind of a tradition, and it gives you it helps connect you to the past, and it gives more meaning to something. So, I can see both sides of it. In my rant, I'm kind of leaning more toward the Ryan Russillo side of it, but I can see what you're saying. But it is kind of like, this is where things are going. I'm not naive enough to think that a few people screaming about we're losing tradition, all this stuff is going to change anything. We're moving in the direction you're talking about, but.
Yeah, so look, my first overall take is college football, college basketball, Major League Baseball, the sports that are, not the most popular, but they're kind of underneath the more popular sports. They're not going anywhere. Okay? We will have college football forever. It's not going to go anywhere. It still makes plenty of money. It still, rates well on television. College basketball, the college basketball tournament, we're always going to have that, because it's still going to be there. Maybe it's not going to be as popular as it was in the 90s. For a
variety of reasons.
It's not going to be like it was when guys stayed in school and all that stuff. It's not going to be like that, but it's still going to be here. It's not going anywhere. So this idea that, this is just going to it's not going to ruin it. Now, is it better? I don't know. It's different. I think that I think that the college football system that from 30 years ago has gotten better. Now, is it exactly what I want? No. It's way better than it used to be, but it's not. Yeah. It's not as good as we need. So I think what rivalries? How important are rivalries to you? I guess is my question. Is that? I know it's important to the sport, in some capacity, but how far do we need to go to preserve the rivalries?
See, we're asking that question because in our lifetimes, things have moved in a direction where it's, a lot of stuff is about the money, and then and if it's not about the money, it's about the biggest thing. It's not so. Like in college football, it's all about getting into the playoff and winning the national championship. So people don't really care as much about winning a conference or winning your rivalry game or whatever. They just want to win the national championship. So I think we're talking about that a certain way, but over our lifetime, things have changed. And it's not just so asking that question, we're asking it from a standpoint of things have already changed, and then, everything's cool. So it's we're kind of assuming that things were just moving in that direction naturally, and it was always going to move in this direction. And it's not necessarily. Things happen for a reason. Things happen because people make decisions, especially with something like this. Things happen because people make decisions over multiple decades, and it propels things a certain way. And then we now will think about stuff in a certain way that makes sense now, but 20, 30 years ago, it might not have made sense. So how important are rivalries? Well, it's not that important to me, because I'm a bigger NFL and NBA fan than I am college football. But for some people, I think it is important, and I think when we push things toward, we sort of nationalize it, where it's just the national championship, and then we forget about the different regional things that happen. The SEC football is a certain way in the SEC. It's a certain way in the Midwest with the Big Ten. It's a certain way with the Pac-12 and with the Big 12, or with the ACC. we're kind of, when we nationalize everything, it's kind of at the expense of this regional stuff. And I do get that it's become a little bit too regional, maybe, but there's something, and maybe I'm romanticizing it, but there's something, like I said, it's tradition or something. I don't know. It's just maybe it's hard for me to describe it, but it's just something that seems like it means something. So,
yeah, I mean, look, if we want college football to be more popular, right? To grab more people, then it can't just be regional. We can't just have all the good teams in the South and then that's the end of it. And that's kind of what's happened. So I think, but these moves that they're making, consolidating these good teams into conferences together is a move to make the sport more national. And isn't that what we want? Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, in basketball, right? It becomes a national story when LeBron's in the finals. Isn't that what we want for the sport? Like, isn't that what we want it to be, a national, people talking about it nationally? And there's parts of the country that don't watch college football that much. The Northeast is not really into college football the same way the South is, the same way the Midwest is, and so I think bringing these things together now, the way it's being done, we could argue about that all day. Because it's just a complete mess. It's all over the place. Well, we're doing it this and we're going to do, because there's these groups of people that have completely different interests, and they want to do things a completely different way. And so that's the problem. College football is it's like we have all these, and this is my overriding thing that I don't understand why college football can't figure this out. There's all of this money involved. Across the United States, through every conference, every team, there's all this money involved. Okay. And when you have competing businesses in the same industry, what generally happens, right? Those businesses consolidate, right, to make the profits better for everybody, right? That's generally that's how business works. Okay. This big company gobbles up this smaller company so they can get their market share, so they can increase their profits. Right? It's capitalist. That's what's going on in college football. So why can't these conferences get their act together and go, all right, guys, look, we're all making a ton of money here. Let's just figure out how we can divide it up in a suitable way that works for however many teams you want to put in there. And then let's make this product better. And it's just that's the biggest issue. No one's looking out for college football. Everybody's out. Oh, well, got to make money for ourselves and whatever. And no one's
because you're
in charge of it. No one's there to try to figure it out.
It's incredibly regional for decades. I mean, that's kind of the way it was.
Right.
I'll talk about that more in my rant about what you're saying about consolidation. I've got a whole thing on that.
It's just an obvious business principle, right? Just forget the fact that it's a sport. Forget that. Just look at it as a business. This is not what you would do. You wouldn't have, 5 different businesses, the Power 5 conferences, all going their own direction and everybody's off doing whatever. And it's like, we're missing the point, so I think expanding the playoff maybe helps this a little bit, but there needs to be, I've been saying this for a while now, there needs to be a constitutional convention for college football. Okay, they need to get everybody in a room and they all need to negotiate this and figure this out, because there's so much money at stake and there's so much more that could be made if they just organize this correctly. So I guess this is just my personality. I'm not beholden to tradition. I think we got to change for the better. And look, like I said, Miami and Florida State used to be the biggest game of the season. It's not anymore. Nebraska, Oklahoma those are the 2 best teams, some of those, back in the 70s, those were the 2 best teams we were ever going to see. So I think, we can hold on to a lot of those traditional things, and some of those traditional things are still good, right? Ohio State and Michigan still have good teams.
Yeah.
They still have good teams. They're still, that rivalry is still a big deal. So I think some of it can be preserved, but, I don't have a problem with it. I wish that we could figure this out to run the sport better. As I said, it's better than it was, but it's not as good as it needs to be. These things are easy to fix, and it's much easier in a professional league where everybody's under the same umbrella. I get it, but yeah, at some point they've got to. These businesses make way too much money to not try to figure out how to organize this better.
All right.
So anyway, any thoughts?
No, we can kind of move on. Like I said, I'll get into more. I got a rant. I'll get into more of that when I do that.